河南的肉价和菜价比气温还要低。
In Henan, the prices of meat and vegetables are even lower than the temperature. Just how low are they? Pork shoulder costs less than 9 yuan per half kilo. Pork bones are under 10 yuan. Lamb is 26 yuan, and cilantro is 1.8 yuan, not per bunch, but per half kilo. In the supermarket, older ladies are all grabbing 2 big heads of Chinese cabbage each. It must be really cheap, not 0.92 yuan per half kilo, but 0.09 yuan.
Due to deflation and downgraded consumer spending, basic household consumption has dropped significantly towards the end of the year. The most dramatic drop has been in beef prices. The beef market in China has been particularly unusual this year. Beef, which was once too expensive for most people, has almost dropped to the price of pork. Since the beginning of the year, prices have fallen continuously for 12 months. Wholesale beef prices have dropped 24% in just 6 months, hitting a 5-year low. According to monitoring data from the Chinese Communist Party's Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Affairs, in the 50th week of 2024, the average weekly wholesale market price for beef was 60 yuan per kilogram, down 1.3% from the previous week and 16.2% lower than the same period last year. A representative from the China Animal Husbandry Association explained that this is because of the significant price gap between domestic and imported beef, which has driven a surge in beef imports. In 2013, beef imports were less than 300,000 tons. By 2023, they had reached 2.74 million tons, an increase of more than 8 times, accounting for 36.4% of China's total beef production. From 2019 to 2023 alone, beef imports increased by 65%, making beef one of the largest imported meat products. Some experts believe the drop in beef prices is closely tied to weak demand. Besides declining consumer purchasing power, prices for alternative animal proteins like pork and eggs have been low this year, boosting their consumption and reducing the demand for beef. It's not just meat. Fruit prices in China are also plummeting. With the Chinese New Year approaching, the price and quality of cherries, a holiday favorite, have drawn a lot of attention in China. In early November, when air-shipped cherries first hit the market, they were priced at over 100 yuan per half kilogram, which many found shockingly expensive. But by early December, as sea-shipped cherries began arriving, the high prices started to loosen and began falling rapidly. By late December, news of a cherry price crash was trending across major Chinese platforms. Some people reported that in certain areas, cherries were selling for as low as 15 yuan per half kilo. Days earlier, they were over 100 yuan. Sudden drop left many people saying, "I bought too early and lost money." Another item experiencing a sharp decline is Maotai liquor. Since the beginning of 2023, the market price of Maotai 1935 had steadily fallen, dropping from 1,200 yuan to between 800 and 1,000 yuan. In the second half of the year, the price drop accelerated. By October, wholesale prices had fallen to 740 yuan per bottle, and some reports indicated prices as low as 690 yuan per bottle. Compared to the peak price of 1,800 yuan per bottle, drastic drop earned Maotai 1935 the nickname Diving Champion. According to some experts, the retail price of Maotai 1935 has already fallen below 700 yuan per bottle, nearly half of the official retail price of 1,188 yuan. A second-hand liquor dealer said, "A year ago, I could buy it back for over 1,000 yuan, but not anymore. Back in 2022 and 2023, many people were buying it, but now fewer people are interested, and the price is falling along with Feitian Maotai." Mr. Pang, a regional distributor from Zhoukou, revealed that the Maotai 1935 he once sold for 1,250 yuan per bottle can now only fetch 700 yuan. He added that the entire Maotai products line is seeing price drops, and they are eager to offload their huge inventories. There's hardly any profit in selling Maotai 1935 now. But this result isn't surprising. Like some luxury goods, Maotai's brand overexploited market trust, leading to this brand collapse. The early success of Maotai 1935 relied heavily on brand appeal and speculative hype. But it lacked a solid market foundation or unique positioning. Consumers soon realized that this liquor lacked the cultural significance of Feitian Maotai and had no distinctive value proposition. As the market cooled and speculation faded, the bubble around Maotai 1935 inevitably burst. Airline tickets haven't been spared by deflation either. At the end of December, several people in China posted online that they managed to snag Hainan Airline tickets for just 3 yuan for a flight from Chengdu to Beijing on January 4th, plus a 70 yuan fuel surcharge. The total cost was only 73 yuan. One person who got a ticket said, "I was arguing with my boyfriend late at night and decided to book a ticket to go home. I accidentally found this super cheap ticket. When I saw the price, I grabbed his phone and booked another one. That cheap ticket actually helped us make up, and now we're planning to go to Beijing together." In an interview with Chinese media, a staff member from the booking platform said that as long as the ticket is issued successfully, it can be used normally. The platform will ensure a smooth travel experience, and there are no hidden traps. This isn't the first time such low fares have appeared. Back in October, there was already a wave of dirt cheap tickets across mainland China. Flights like Chengdu to Lhasa for 179 yuan, Chengdu to Guiyang for 209 yuan, and Chengdu to Hohhot starting at 170 yuan were cheaper than train tickets. By the end of the year, prices had dropped even further, down to single digits. The real estate market is also part of this price collapse. At the end of every year, property developers rush to clear their books. China's housing market continues to slide, and even in top-tier cities like Guangzhou, properties are being sold at rock-bottom prices. A promotional video from a housing development in Guangzhou has gone viral on social media platforms like Douyin. The video claims that a state-owned enterprise is selling off apartments at the core of the central business district to recover funds. The properties have residential utilities, come fully furnished, have ownership rights, and are ready for move-in. The video mentions that the original price was 20,000 yuan per square meter, but now they're being sold at 5,500 yuan per square meter, a 70% discount. A one-bedroom unit is priced at 198,000 yuan, and a two-bedroom unit is just 396,000 yuan. Earlier, there were reports that a development in Nanchun, Panyu, was also selling at a 70% discount. These apartments, fully furnished and with ownership rights, were selling for just 230,000 yuan for a two-bedroom unit. Even back in April, large-scale price cuts were already happening in the area, with some apartments going for 7,000 yuan per square meter. By October, a developer in Shibi, Panyu, desperate for cash flow, started selling units for 33,000 yuan for 6 square meters, 5,500 yuan per square meter. Beyond Huangpu and Panyu, similar sales have recently been reported in Guangzhou's Tianhe district, with small units priced as low as 218,000 yuan. These jaw-dropping prices have led people online to exclaim, "Looks like Guangzhou's housing market has collapsed." The selling frenzy isn't limited to Guangzhou. In cities like Beijing, Fuzhou, Jinan, and Xiamen, state-owned enterprises are also unloading properties, adding even more pressure to falling prices. The Wall Street Journal reported that earlier in 2024, a key CCP advisory body prepared a report warning top leaders that if urgent measures weren't taken to boost the economy, China risked falling into a deflationary spiral, similar to the Great Depression in the US from 1929 to 1933. Chinese President Xi Jinping reportedly asked his advisors what deflation looked like, and when told that falling prices were a sign, he responded, "What's wrong with deflation? Isn't everyone happy when things get cheaper?" This remark, if true, echoes the infamous words of Emperor Hui of Jin, who, when told about a famine and widespread deaths, responded, "Why don't they eat minced meat?" It also calls to mind Marie Antoinette's alleged remark, "Let them eat cake." If Xi Jinping really said this, it could go down in history. A leader unaware of the severe consequences of deflation running a country the size of China. This can't end well. The report mentions 2 types of deflation that can lead to a downward spiral: structural deflation and debt-driven deflation. The warning to Xi's top economic advisors specifically addressed debt-driven deflation, the same pattern seen during the Great Depression in the United States. The reason it's called a spiral is that as the cycle moves from production to distribution to consumption and back, liquidity tightens with each turn. The more this cycle repeats, the tighter the liquidity becomes, much like a spring that coils tighter and tighter, eventually leading to economic depression. Commentator Wen Zhao summarized the root of this deflation by pointing out that too much debt was borrowed by those who shouldn't have been allowed to borrow in the first place. When borrowers can't repay their debts, they're forced to sell everything they own, liquidating assets to cover their liabilities. This leads to two possible outcomes. 1. If they manage to sell their properties or land at a high price, a large amount of money is sucked out of circulation and paid back to the banks. This tightens liquidity across production and consumption sectors. 2. If they can't sell at a high price, assets are dumped at lower prices. This drives down property values, shrinking companies' net worth and causing losses for banks. Either way, the speed of economic activity slows down. When companies' net worth drops, profits fall, leading to production cuts and layoffs. Companies compete to see who can downsize faster. Banks, having suffered their own losses, become more cautious, further tightening lending. Even higher quality companies find it difficult to secure loans, as banks recall loans and deny renewals. This results in more bankruptcies and an even slower economy. As the cycle repeats, both consumption and production spending shrink. Although prices drop, people's wallets empty even faster, and purchasing power falls even further. A notable characteristic of deflation is complex interest rate fluctuations. Some wonder if deflation always means high bank interest rates. Not necessarily. Nominal interest rates might appear stable or manageable during deflation, but banks impose stricter screening on borrowers. Even if the rates seem low, if banks refuse to lend, borrowers are left with no choice but to seek high-interest loans elsewhere. One major issue during deflation is the increasing real value of existing debt. As asset values and profits decline, the remaining unpaid debts become heavier burdens. If loans come due during this period and banks refuse to roll them over, borrowers must seek expensive financing alternatives. Therefore, even if nominal interest rates are low, the actual market rate can be high, reflecting the real supply and demand for capital. This means deflation doesn't necessarily come with high interest rates. Countries experience deflation differently. Japan's past 30 years of deflation, for example, saw low interest rates and quantitative easing. Sometimes the deflation was mild, sometimes severe, and occasionally there were small bursts of inflation. But overall, Japan remained in a deflationary state. Debt-driven deflation is powered by debt, with banks at the core of the financial system. The key is to prevent large-scale bank failures. During the U.S. Great Depression, widespread bank collapses reduced the money supply and lowered saving rates, deepening deflation from the liquidity side. Currently, more than 50% of China's total liabilities are bank loans, whether household debt or local government hidden debts. This makes China's deflation a classic case of debt-driven deflation. Banks are under immense pressure, and if they collapse, China could experience a depression similar to the U.S.'s in the 1930s, rather than Japan's slow-burning lost decades. Another common form of deflation is structural deflation, which differs from debt-driven deflation in that it occurs more naturally. Structural deflation does not involve excessive leverage. Instead, it arises from the mismatch between active production and conservative monetary policy. For example, technological advancements improve production efficiency and lower costs, but if monetary policy doesn't expand to match this, the increased supply of goods and services moves prices down while the total amount of money in circulation stays the same. This strengthens the purchasing power of money. Companies often lower prices to compete for market share, which can lead to some level of economic competition. This type of deflation is usually mild. From the late 1870s, during the electrification revolution, until World War I, Europe and the US experienced structural deflation. In the era of the gold standard, structural deflation was inevitable. Printing money required gold reserves as a backing. In 1900, $1 corresponded to 0.048 ounces of gold, limiting how much money could be printed. Gold production grew more slowly than the productivity released technological advancements, resulting in deflation. Under these conditions, companies could offset negative impacts by lowering costs and expanding production. This form of deflation did not involve sharp contractions in bank credit or mass bankruptcies, so it didn't trigger soaring unemployment. Wages might not have risen significantly, but falling prices meant real wages increased, creating the lower prices, happier people scenario that Xi Jinping referred to. China is currently experiencing debt-driven deflation, a far cry from the scenario where falling prices lead to public contentment. Instead, wages and prices are dropping together, unemployment is rising, and the real value of debt is increasing. This is the most painful form of deflation. By the end of 2024, these economic phenomena have created a heavy and oppressive atmosphere across Chinese society. The downturn isn't limited to surface-level urban stagnation, but cuts across nearly all social classes, turning economic contraction into a broader societal deflation. For the working class and middle class, job insecurity, mounting debt, and declining living standards are now clearly everyday realities. Meanwhile, private entrepreneurs, long wary of the political landscape but holding on to some hope, are beginning to realize that they're caught in the CCP's tightening grip. They face the constant threat of being reeled in from overseas. Even bureaucrats, including executives at state-owned enterprises, are feeling the weight of a system that leaves them vulnerable and powerless. This might be the defining mood of late 2024, a society where not only ordinary people but also officials feel trapped in a pressure cooker. Some flee the country, others lash out, while others resign themselves to apathy. Intellectuals, long stripped of dignity, occasionally let out sarcastic remarks to be silenced and humiliated. In early December, economists like Gao Shanchun, who dared to comment on the economy, were banned by the CCP, leaving only the wealthiest elites and officials barely holding on at the top. For most people, the wealth and social status accumulated over the past 40 years now seem insignificant. Every social class appears to have sunk to a new low, unable to plan for the future or manage expectations. As a result, decision-making, whether about investment, having children, transferring assets, or fleeing the country, has become increasingly paralyzed. Young people, especially second-generation entrepreneurs and the wealthy, feel lost. They lack the confidence to take over family businesses and show little interest in the social rituals their parents enjoyed, such as drinking Maotai, collecting pu'er tea, or forging connections. 2 years after the end of the COVID-19 pandemic, some of these young elites have begun sympathizing with the white paper movement protesters, the small intellectual class that once stood against authority. Through witnessing the misfortunes befalling their families and peers, they have begun to understand the harsh realities of life and society, much like the lost generation after World War I. They now seek deeper answers to life's harshness. Meanwhile, many ordinary young people are turning to mysticism. On subway rides to and from work, they devour fantasy novels and eagerly pursue various spiritual practices. From tarot cards to astrology and fortune-telling, they seek solace in both Eastern and Western fatalism. Over the past 2 or 3 years, fortune-telling and Taoist beliefs have made an unexpected comeback, reflecting the rising fervor for New Age and pseudo-religions, reminiscent of China in the 1990s. As for the massive bureaucratic class, their daily rituals of Maotai, card games, and passive compliance have driven home the realization that the CCP's increasingly narrow political landscape is a trap in itself. Within this system, the faint hope of promotion or purpose can be extinguished at any moment by directives demanding sacrifice for the party. Many find themselves powerless, subjected to the whims of the party. Even lobbyists and political brokers navigating between government and business now risk being branded as political frauds or foreign spies. The remaining few intellectuals who dare to speak out are swiftly silenced. This all paints a bleak picture of a society where not just the ordinary people, but even the elite class finds itself struggling to breathe. With CCP leadership stubbornly staying its course and under the pressure to squeeze out every last resource, nearly all remote inland provinces in China have turned to visible state violence. This crackdown is directed at the 5 coastal provinces and cities with thriving private economies, as well as private business owners and the middle class. Whether these individuals hold cash, wealth, power, social connections, or intellectual influence, no one is safe in a collapsing system. This unchecked violence may well be the root of the nation's entwined economic and political decline.